Splatoon has been one of the most unique shooter games to ever release, and I instantly fell in love with it. So when I saw Foamstars being announced, I was actually quite excited to see how it would compare to Splatoon 3, as someone who's been playing the franchise since the first game. After playing the game for the better part of a week and enjoying it, the question dawned on me. Is it better than Splatoon? Okay, spoilers, no, absolutely not. But it's definitely not a bad game. I'm gonna do exactly what Square Enix said not to and compare Foamstars to Splatoon 3 to see how it holds up. These 7 categories are things I care about ordered from most to least. Starting off with the most important question. How does the game actually feel to play? Splatoon has some of the most fluid gameplay of any shooter game, with an uninterrupted cycle of movement and action. It feels silky smooth with practically no issues, and at its core, Splatoon's gameplay is pretty much perfect. Foamstars does have a couple humps to get over, but overall, the core gameplay is still very fun and the movement is quite good. The foam spreads around quite well, and the verticality is also a really cool element that Splatoon doesn't have. When you do enough damage to someone, instead of them dying instantly, you actually just knock them out, and you need to confirm the kill by getting close enough to them and sliding into them. Another thing that this allows is your teammates are able to revive you when you're knocked down, which I think is a pretty cool feature. Since it can be harder to get a kill in this game though, unlike Splatoon, there's no super jump or a way to get right back into the action. If you end up getting killed, you gotta walk all the way back to the place where all the action's going down. Honestly, the absolute biggest complaint I have about Foamstars is the reloading. When you're in squid form in Splatoon, you automatically reload your ink, removing the need to do this manually. But in Foamstars, you do need to manually reload when you run out of ammo. If your ammo isn't full and you stop using your weapon for a bit, you will gradually regenerate some, but it is extremely slow. The reload speed itself just feels a little bit long. I don't think having to reload is inherently bad. It's definitely not as good as Splatoon, but for how fast your ammo depletes and how long it takes to reload, I think it just feels a little bit wonky. This can be fixed by just making ammo drain slower and reload times faster. Other than that though, the core gameplay feels good. However, there is unfortunately one major issue with Foamstars that will probably never be addressed, being the visual clutter. With how high the foam flies and how long it stays in the air, the screen can get filled with so much stuff that you immediately lose focus of what you're supposed to do and get distracted. I began getting used to it the more I played the game, but it's still absolutely an issue, and unfortunately not one that's easily fixed. The game does have gyro aiming, just like Splatoon, however it has less smoothing, meaning if you have shaky hands, you'll notice that your aim will be a lot less stable. In games like Overwatch, you're able to customize your smoothing values, and I really would like to see that here in Foamstars, and in Splatoon as well for that matter. Another thing I want to bring up is that I played this game on the 2013 base jet engine, otherwise known as the PlayStation 4, and there were frequent frame drops below 60 frames a second. This game was designed for the PS5, so I don't want to inherently criticize the game for this, but if Nintendo can squeeze a stable 60 FPS out of the Switch, I'm sure the optimization could have been a little bit better here. Moving on to the game modes, which are mostly good. Smash the Star is this game's primary game mode, and it's okay. It is better than Turf War in my opinion. The mode works kinda like Team Deathmatch. Once you've killed enough players on the enemy team, the star player spawns with a lot of health, kind of like a juggernaut, and when the star player is killed, the game ends. I think this mode is okay, but similar to Turf War, I feel like it's just not engaging enough for me. Rubber Duck Party is similar to Tower Control from Splatoon, or a payload game mode from something like Overwatch or TF2. Stand on the payload to claim it and push it towards your enemy's goal. I'm a big fan of payload game modes if it can move at the right speed. Overwatch. And I think it's really good in this game because you can dance. If you can hold the payload for a long enough time by dancing, it'll send you on a massive forward boost and it really helps keep the game moving. This is probably my favorite game mode for solo queue. The last game mode is Happy Bath Survival, which is an arena game mode where you 2v2 against another team. I played this primarily with some friends, and if you actually have good communication, I love this game mode. It plays amazing having to manage your foam on the ground, health, ammo, and everything else while you're communicating with your team at the same time. When you and your one teammate are in the arena, 2 other teammates are above you and can support you by spraying foam onto the arena. Playing this solo isn't great though because of the lack of communication, but if you're queued with friends, I think this is an amazing mode. This game also has mode rotations similar to Splatoon. However, instead of it being map rotations, it's only game mode rotations, with maps being randomized. Each game mode is in rotation for 1 hour and it switches out for the next one. The ranked system in this game works almost exactly like Splatoon 3's series system, which I think is fine, but when Splatoon came out, there was a lump sum of players stuck at the bottom rank, and right now in Foamstars, that's the exact same thing that's happening. There's also private matches for friends, so you can just goof around. Overall, this game doesn't have as many game modes as Splatoon, but hopefully there will be more added in the future. Next, I want to briefly touch on the maps in this game. Splatoon 3 has been infamous for having extremely narrow and cramped maps without flanks, and this game is the complete opposite. Most maps are extremely open with lots of space to roam around, and because you can stack foam vertically, it can enable some really creative flank routes. Some of them even have moving elements that, as the game is played, constantly move around the map, can provide cover, and can change routes through the map. You could consider the maps a bit too open, but personally, I rather this over cramped any day. They play well, but visually can tend to blend together a little bit. I would appreciate a little more visual deviation in the map design. And the last thing I'm going to talk about for gameplay is the ability system. You use these credits to roll a random ability on the character of your choosing, and in addition to this, there are different levels of the ability you choose, so you can get a really good movement speed up or more of a minor movement speed buff. You earn these currencies naturally just from leveling up your character, which also provides you with the unlocks of game modes, characters, and at the same time leveling up your battle pass to unlock the cosmetic items. So overall for gameplay, the movement and weapons feel good, it's just the reloading I want tweaked, the game modes are good, and the maps play well, but they can tend to blend together visually. The ability system and progression is pretty similar to Splatoon, and it's fine. It's nothing amazing. Moving on to the different classes in this game. At launch we've got 8 playable characters, with all of them being pretty balanced. I'm going to summarize all 8 here. First off is Soa, who plays most similar to Julie's from Splatoon, and that is straight up a Halo Needler in her hand. Up close high damage with one ability kind of like the Splatoon dodge roll, and another that sends in a bomb that explodes after a little bit. Her ultimate is just a straight up baller from Splatoon 2 as well. In my opinion, this is probably the best character in the game, and also one of the most fun. Next up we got Agito, who's got a shotgun. His shark ability allows him to close the gap really quickly, taking advantage of the shotgun's close range. His ultimate and other abilities aren't anything special, but he's pretty fun. Tonix is a decent character with abilities that can operate independently from playing the game, and her main weapon's semi-auto mode can dish out some good damage at range, but the bombs are pretty hit or miss and unreliable. She's okay, but probably one of the lesser characters. Jet Justice is basically just a Guido if he took steroids, and bench presses 400 pounds. He also has a shotgun, but it's much more heavy duty. He has a Doomfist type ability which I find quite fun, and another one similar to the Zarya ultimate from Overwatch. His ultimate ability is a bubble shield, again probably based off the big bubbler from Splatoon. He's much more defensive focused, but I still think he's okay. Penny Gwyn is kind of just like your standard rifleman. She has a rifle that actually does very good damage, but the projectiles move pretty slow, and it does require a bit of skill to learn and aim your projectiles properly. One of her abilities is kind of like the curling bomb from Splatoon, and her other ability is just really fun. The ultimate isn't very good though. Overall, she's a pretty good character though. The next two, Wavebreaker and Baristador, are extremely similar due to the fact their main weapon plays almost exactly the same. But whereas Wavebreaker's abilities are not that good, Baristador's are much better in my opinion. I think Wavebreaker is an okay character and Baristador is quite good. And finally we have Melty, which I can't even play because she's paywalled. She unlocks at tier 31 in the battle pass, but if you pay, you can get it right away. After playing the game for a total of nearly 10 hours, I was still only about 2/3 of the way to unlocking her, and I just can't be bothered to try her out myself. Looking at footage of her though, she actually looks really good. Her main weapons are a burst of rockets that lock on, and her abilities send down a storm of rockets and send her up in the air. Her ultimate is also just the killer whale from Splatoon. Overall though, I think the balancing in this game is pretty good, and most of the characters are designed well as well. I just wish that Wavebreaker, well, didn't sound like Wavebreaker from Splatoon, and also wasn't so similar to Baristador. Kind of a waste of having these two separate characters when one is just a better version of the other. But I'm glad that nothing is truly overpowered and nothing is garbage as well. Good job guys. And now let's talk about the second mode, missions. There's two types of these, the Foamstars missions, which are single player only, and the squad missions. First, let's talk about the Foamstars missions. These missions are the closest we really have to a single player campaign in this game, and I'll be honest, they kinda suck. The main premise of mission mode is it's a PvE tower defense style mode where enemies are coming at the energy core and it's your job to defend it. The main problem I have with these missions is, one, they are insanely linear. This goes for the squad missions as well, but all enemies come from the exact same place, which makes it a lot less stimulating since you only need to be watching one area and you know where everything's gonna come from. But the part of this that's even worse is that these missions are literally just tutorials, which has the side effect of them being unbelievably easy. I did not take a single single point of damage for most of these missions, and not once did anything touch the energy core. I got an S+ rank on all of these first try every time. If you have even the slightest bit of experience with Splatoon or Foamstars, you're best off just skipping these entirely, unless you want to know about the lore. I'll come back to this in a little bit, but for now, let's talk about the squad missions. These are a lot more fleshed out, but still nowhere near as interesting as Splatoon 3's Salmon Run mode or other horde modes like COD Zombies. The normal difficulty on these is thankfully most of the time a decent challenge, and you actually might fail. However, it's still not a very in-depth game mode. After every wave, you get an ability unlock, which is something I actually do like and would enjoy seeing in Splatoon's Salmon Run, and the difficulty ramps up quite quick over the 10 waves. But just like the Foamstars missions, all of the enemies come from one spot, and they spawn in predictable waves every time. As for the hard mode though, I'll be completely honest, I couldn't stay alive for longer than 15 seconds in these. This is probably because I was playing with randoms and couldn't get any friends to play this game, so I had no means of communicating. But judging by the percent of players with the trophy for clearing hard mode, I think it's safe to say this might be a legitimate challenge. The last two things I'm going to talk about for missions are the upgrade system and the rotation system. By completing missions, you earn Miracle Dust, which you can spend on abilities to level up your characters. I actually don't like this system because it makes you play the game a lot, but not to increase your skill, but to increase what your character is capable of. I honestly would have preferred these to be cosmetic only, and just keep the upgrades they give you in-game. As for the rotations, they function the same as multiplayers, having one map for both normal and hard mode at a time, which swap out after an hour. I again don't really like this because the lack of randomness between missions. I know Splatoon's Salmon Run rotations function fairly similar, but remember, that mode is way more random with having to account for spawns and everything, and even then, I'm still not the biggest fan of the Splatoon rotation system. So to summarize missions, Foamstars missions suck gameplay-wise, squad missions are okay, and the upgrade system kinda sucks as well. If you're gonna play the game, you won't be playing this mode much, I assure you. It really doesn't add much. Just go play COD Zombies or Splatoon Salmon Run or any other horde mode game. The one redeeming quality about the Foamstars missions though is the Wake up, filthy. This is the main place you'll get lore about the game, with the bulk of it revolving around the character you're playing as. The main plot of the missions is that Bath Vegas, the fictional city of Foamstars, is under attack from bubble buddies, and you gotta stop them. Also, this grandma is straight up just a blatant copy of Captain Cuttlefish, I'm not gonna lie, come on Square, you couldn't think of anything else. As you play through the missions, little stories are narrated and presented through text boxes, and at the end of the mission, you get a little cutscene. The lore itself doesn't go that deep, with most of it being basic motivational shit and revolving heavily around the characters' backstories before they join the Foamstars. I won't go full in depth on the lore here, most of the themes are fairly bland, however there is a little bit that sticks out. It's for sure better than nothing though. As for the game's visual style, it's honestly pretty nice, and I also love how both it and Splatoon are able to deviate from the typical gritty war aesthetic of most shooter games. The whole game show aesthetic reminds me a lot of Fall Guys, and the neon colorful stuff feels like an RGB gamer house fever dream that I would have had when I was 8 years old. Your lobby is a private penthouse way up in the sky with a bar and a helipad and a bunch of other cool shit from Las Vegas. The actual look of the Foma as well is really cool, and it's confirmed in lore that it is edible. Most of the character designs are pretty nice as well, but like I mentioned earlier, there is quite a bit of visual clutter, and this can totally get in the way of gameplay at times. It's fun to look at, but it can be distracting. As for character customization, it's not something that I personally care about in video games much, but I know a lot of people do, and in this game, it's largely paywalled and tied to the battle pass. I'll talk about that very briefly, but there's quite a bit to choose from. You can get whole outfits, board skins, stickers, emotes, and a bunch of other stuff to customize with. But now, it's time to talk monetization and cost of entry. Splatoon 3 is a full-price AAA game at $60 plus the $20 needed for Switch Online, totaling $80 for Splatoon's full experience. For the month of February, Foamstars is completely free to all PlayStation Plus members, which is needed to play the game anyway since it's online. If you buy the game standalone though, the price is $30, which I think is a touch high considering the insane amount of microtransactions. You have the Battle Pass as well, which is $8 and actively locking content behind it, and the prices in the cosmetic shop are kind of insane. 60 Canadian dollars for a character pack. That's a whole ass video game right there. I don't think anyone will be buying much from here. And addressing the elephant in the room, that is the AI generated art. Square Enix stated it was probably used in about 0.001% of the game, and I want to be honest, and I'm going to confirm that because it is so blatantly obvious where it was used because it looks absolutely terrible. Look at these album covers. You can't tell me they couldn't have just hired someone to draw something a little more basic and save themselves from full controversy. So, to sum everything up, should you play this game? Well, it depends. If you already have a PS4 or a PS5 and a PlayStation Plus membership, I say yeah, go for it. especially if you don't have a Switch to play Splatoon on. You've got nothing to lose really, but in any other circumstance, probably not. The core PvP gameplay itself is quite good, and the classes are pretty unique and fun, but with a lackluster PvE mode, no real single player campaign, and microtransactions in a paid game, it's probably not worth it. At this point, I consider Splatoon 3 around an 8 out of 10, and I would give Foamstars around a 6.5 out of 10. But remember, I play Splatoon largely for the PvP mode. If you ask people for their ratings, it's gonna differ. If you're looking at Splatoon strictly for the PvP aspect, then Foamstars can act as a genuine substitute, but it's certainly got its compromises. Let me know in the comments if you've tried Foamstars, what you think of it, and if you haven't, let me know what you think of the game as an outsider looking in. Will I be playing this over Splatoon? No. And also my PlayStation Plus expires in a couple weeks.